Like I said, good morning. I hope you're doing well. My name is Darius Barucha, and I am happy to let you know that I'll be your tutor in AP Macroeconomics through Momentum Learning. This is an open house slash orientation for AP Macroeconomics tutorials. But I think that one of the first things I'd like to let you know is that I'm very open to questions. Please don't feel like you're bothering me or um, please don't feel reluctant to ask questions. If you have a question in the middle of our session together, please ask. If it's about a topic that we've already covered, please ask. Please don't feel reluctant to ask questions. Don't feel reluctant to ask for clarification or ask me to repeat something. This is a review session. Um, we're learning, we're reviewing, and I feel like if you can't ask questions while reviewing and learning, where can you ask? When is the appropriate time to ask, if not in an academic setting? So please ask questions if you have them. And I'm I'm starting off with that comment, with that request on purpose, because I don't want you to feel hesitant to ask. I don't mind if I've already said it. I've already said the concept 5 times. If you don't get it, you don't get it. And you can raise your hand virtually or, on camera and let me know that you have a question. Please don't hesitate to ask a question. A little bit about me. I've been a teacher since 1999. The past 13 years I've spent at Sylvan Lakes High School. I've taught there since 2012. I've taught AP Macroeconomics since 2011. So, and every year that I teach it twice because it's a 1 semester class. So I've taught this class about 25 different times. I'm also an AP reader. The FRQ responses, the free response questions, they have to be graded by a human, not a machine. The multiple choice is graded by a machine, but the free response is graded by a human. And I'm one of those people who fly up to Cincinnati to grade those. And grading the free response questions has given me a lot of insight as to what terms are acceptable and what terms are not acceptable, with how specific you have to be in answering free response questions. Um, what specific phrases will get you the point, what phrases won't get you the point. That's added a lot of that's added to my expertise in teaching AP macro, because I can tell you, that's not going to get you the point, or I can tell you that's going to get the point. So reading the AP tests has been a big boon to my teaching. Another thing I'd like to let you know is that I enjoy teaching. It's a great profession, but I do enjoy it. So please, if you have a question, let me know. And then I guess another thing I'd like to let you know is class participation is encouraged. I may ask a question that I'd like someone to answer, and I don't want to just stare into the void and not have it answered. So please, I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. If you choose not to answer, that's okay. But the more interactive we can be together, I feel the better. If you're watching this as a recording, um, that's okay. You'll still get a lot out of it. But if you are watching it live, please do feel free to ask questions, make comments, and answer questions. So I am going to share my screen with you. I mean, I need to put on the glasses. Here's a presentation that Momentum Learning has put together that they'd like me to share with you. Hmm. Okay. Well, we'll do the best we can. Um, so yeah, there's my name, Mr. Barucha. 2025. There's a little bit about me. I went to Texas Christian University for my BA, my Bachelor of Arts. I've taught for 25 years. AP Macro, I've taught for since 2011, so I guess that's about 14 years. I was a table leader at the AP reading, so I managed people. Uh, the passing scores for students who take AP Macro face to face are about 98%. Um, Micro, the lowest for micro was 91%. So scores are almost always above 90%. The only year my score was below 90% was my very first year teaching macro in 2011, and that was 88%. So 2012 and beyond, the passing scores have always been above 90. So I feel like my students do really well on the AP macro and micro test, but this is macro. I've been lucky enough to earn some honors, wrestling teacher of the month a few times, outstanding teacher more than a few times. I try to put my students first. Um, if you need something, let me know. I'm here to help you achieve your goals, however you define those goals. So let me know. Remember that this is a review class. So we're starting this journey together with me presuming that you've already taken AP macroeconomics, um, or you're taking it, but that you are fairly um, conversant in AP macro, that we're we're not starting from scratch. So that's why, as you can read up here, it says in red letters, this is a review class. Hopefully, you already have a basic understanding of supply and demand, aggregate supply, aggregate demand, um, monetary policy, fiscal policy, etc. And this course is designed to bring that out, the knowledge that you've already been taught and you already have, and to help you apply it to get a 4 or 5 on the AP macroeconomics test, which is held in May 9th. There it is. The AP macroeconomics exam has 2 parts. It has a multiple choice part where you'll be given 70 minutes, 70. You'll be given 70 minutes to answer 60 multiple choice questions. So that gives you about 1.15 minutes per question, which means you're going to have to know your stuff. There are going to be some questions where you may put your pencil down and you may need to think about it. And it may take you 2 or 3 minutes to answer that question. If you want to finish and answer all of the questions, if you're taking 2 or 3 minutes on one question, that means there has to be some questions that take you far less than 1 minute. Since I brought that up, one overarching thought about taking the AP macroeconomics exam is that Every question is worth the same number of points. One strategy to take the AP Macroeconomics exam is to go through all of the multiple choice questions, answering the questions where you are fairly certain. And you go through all 60. You skip questions that you feel, even if you know if you feel that you can find the correct answer, but that'll take more than 2 minutes to find the correct answer. You skip those. If you feel like the question will take you 3 or 4 minutes to answer, even with a high degree of confidence in your answer, you skip that because question 10 that takes you 4 minutes to answer is worth the same number of points as question 11 that takes you 15 seconds to answer. There is no guessing penalty. A wrong answer is the same as a blank answer. So um, if you only have 5 seconds left and you have one question to answer, bubble in a random answer choice, you may get it. So back to the strategy, for questions 1 through 60, you answer all of the questions that you feel you can answer with a high degree of confidence, that you can answer relatively quickly. Then you go back and answer and work on the questions that you have not already answered. And you keep doing that until you answer all of the questions or time runs out. So this, as you can read, it says this is a hybrid digital exam. The free response questions are written by hand. The multiple choice questions you'll answer um, using a computer. And the whole the free response takes the sort of you're given an hour for the free response. So in between multiple choice and free response, there may be a short break. Multiple choice is 70 minutes. Free response is 60 minutes. The free response questions in general don't require a paragraph to answer. Succinct, brief, and accurate answers are what we're looking for. You don't need to write a 5 paragraph essay. You'll probably not need to write a paragraph. Another thought about free response is answer the question. Too often, as an AP reader, I read answers that don't answer the question that was asked. The question may be, should the Federal Reserve buy or sell bonds? And the answer is the Federal Reserve should move aggregate demand to the right. But that wasn't the question. The question was not, should aggregate demand move to the right or left? The question was, should the Federal Reserve buy or sell bonds? If the question is, should the Federal Reserve buy or sell bonds? You've got a 50-50 shot at answering that question. The answer is either buy bonds or sell bonds. Here's another thought. If the free response question doesn't ask you to explain, don't. Because if the answer is buy bonds, and then you write an explanation and your explanation is incorrect, you will not get the point. If the answer is buy bonds, and then you write an explanation that's correct, you don't get bonus points. So on one hand, you'll lose all of the points. If you write the correct answer with an incorrect explanation, you'll lose all of the points. On the other hand, you will earn no extra points. So why write an explanation when it's not asked for? You have nothing to gain and you have everything to lose. Don't flip that coin. If the question says, should government spending increase or decrease? Then either write increase or decrease, but don't explain it. For FRQ questions that require an explanation, a brief, accurate answer is what you need. You don't need to go off on some Shakespearean soliloquy. You need to answer the question. I'll give you an example. The question is, interest rates in the United States increase. Will demand of the dollar in foreign exchange markets increase, decrease, or remain the same? Explain. I'll repeat the question. Interest rates in the United States increase. Will demand of the dollar in foreign exchange markets increase, decrease, or remain the same? Explain. The answer is about 15 words long. Increase, as investors seek higher rates of return in U.S. Treasury bonds that bear interest. That's it. If you don't want to write U.S. Treasury bonds, you could write U.S. accounts that bear interest, making it a 14-word answer. We're presupposing that investors are always seeking higher rates of interest, but you still need to write that. We're presupposing that the risk of investing in US assets and the other country's assets are the same. You don't have to write that. You have to write a 15, maybe 14-word answer, and that's it. The free response is worth 33% of your AP score. The multiple choice is worth 67% of your AP score. In this class, you'll have weekly homework, and it'll take you between 3/4 of an hour and 1.5 hours to complete. I'd like to meet on Sundays from 3 to 5. Every course will be recorded. So if you can't join us live from 3 to 5 Central Standard Time, you will have access to the recording. I'd recommend that you join us live as much as you can so that you can ask questions, so that you can hear other people's questions, but that's not a requirement. In general, those are the score distributions. Those are the global score distributions, generally speaking. Remember that a 3, 4, or 5 is passing on the AP exam. Also remember that 98% of my students in a face-to-face setting at Seven Lakes High School earn 98% are in this range, in the 3, 4, or 5 range. It is challenging to get a 4 or 5 on the test, but it is doable. And I think that you can study for multiple AP tests and still get a 4 or 5 in AP macroeconomics. I think that the guidance that you'll be given as part of the momentum learning curriculum is at a high level. And I have a strong knowledge of the curriculum, and I have an idea as to what concepts are possibly tested and what concepts are not tested, and the weighting that each concept will be tested. So simple supply and demand in the AP macroeconomics exam is barely tested. We spend time on that only because it's the fundamental bedrock of every other concept going forward. But we're not going to talk about consumer surplus and producer surplus because that's not tested in the AP macroeconomics exam. So we're not going to talk about tariffs and things that the microeconomics exam will cover. So I think you're in good hands with momentum learning and with me. This slide I've already discussed. You have 60 questions. You have 70 minutes, 66% of your score. These are multiple choice questions. So of course, the correct answer will be in front of you. You have to choose it. A, B, C, D, or E. The free response, you're going to have to write the answer. One thing that I didn't discuss for the free response is the idea that you're going to have one quote unquote long question and two shorter questions. So question one may be worth 10 out of 20 points, leaving about 5 points for question two and about 5 points for question three. So since question one is worth the most points, not the majority, but the most, we recommend that you spend most of your time, at least half of your time, on question one. You may be asked to draw a graph. You may be asked to calculate. You may be asked to explain. Remember that if you're asked to explain, a brief, accurate, cogent response is strongly suggested. You don't need to use 10 words where one will do. You need to focus your answer on the question at hand. For calculations, you'll be allowed to use a four-function calculator. I also believe that you will have access to Desmos, a calculator system, especially for the multiple choice. For multiple choice, you'll have a calculator on the computer. For FRQ, you should bring your own four-function calculator, not a graphing calculator. Graphing calculators may not be allowed. Some schools allow them, some schools don't. But every school should allow a four-function calculator, one that allows you to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. In Unit 1, we talk about the basics. The production possibilities curve is a big part of Unit 1. Uh, in Unit 1, we bring up the idea that output equals full employment output, unemployment equals the natural rate of unemployment, inflation equals the expected rate of inflation. Or output is less than full employment output, unemployment is more than the natural rate of unemployment, and inflation is less than the expected rate of inflation. Also, that's the production possibilities curve. Also in Unit 1, we introduce basic economic vocabulary like scarcity and opportunity cost. Another topic in Unit 1 is comparative advantage and mutually beneficial terms of trade. In Section 2, and now the way the we may not cover these concepts in this order in momentum learning because I don't like to teach these concepts in this order. But all of these, we will discuss all of these concepts. I'll give you an example. Foreign exchange is Unit 6, but I'd like to discuss that towards the very front of the class because it's oftentimes a concept that students struggle with. So my thought is to put the more difficult concepts towards the beginning of the class, leaving us more time to discuss those difficult concepts rather than putting those difficult concepts at the end of the class. This is an overview of the topics on the AP Macroeconomics exam, not necessarily the order in which I'll discuss them. Unit 2, circular flow, and unemployment, inflation, GDP are big topics, how to calculate those, whether a certain transaction will count towards GDP or whether it won't. Unit 3, as you can see, is aggregate supply, aggregate demand. That's the first really big topic. Unit 1 is tested at about 10 to 15%. Unit 2 might be a little bit more at 15 to 20. Unit 3 is going to be something like 30, 35%. The whole crux of the course is aggregate supply, aggregate demand. And then with fiscal policy is what governmental policy actions can take place to address a recessionary or inflationary output gap. So we're going to spend a decent amount of time on Unit 3. Unit 4 is a lot of monetary policy with the graph there will be the money market. Another graph will be the market for reserves. So those are two big markets in Unit 4. Unit 4 is another big chunk of the AP exam. The AP College Board gives us ranges. So they say this concept will be tested in the range of 5 to 15%. This concept will be tested in the range of 25 to 35%. So the numbers won't always add up to 100 for the hypotheticals of how much will be tested. So Unit 4 is another big one. Unit 3 is about 30, 35%. So is Unit 4. Unit 4 is another big one where we'll spend a lot of time. Unit 5, as you can see, is the Phillips curve and a little bit of monetary policy with money growth and inflation, a little bit of the fiscal policy with government debts and deficits, fiscal policy with crowding out, and economic growth, which relates to PPC and aggregate supply, aggregate demand. So Unit 5 is another big chunk. Unit 6 is more like roughly 15 to 20%. Um, the big part of Unit 6 is foreign exchange markets. How foreign exchange market, what changes foreign exchange markets and how that change affects a different concept. That's a big part of the AP macroeconomics curriculum. The understanding of not only concept A, concept B, and concept C, but how concept A affects concepts B, C, D, E, and F. And if in that chain, one one you're weak on one concept in that chain, the whole chain is broken. So so far there are two big takeaways I'd like you to have from this open house. One, ask. If you have a question, please ask. If you want clarification, please ask for it. If you need something, please let me know. If I'm talking too fast, if I'm talking too slow, if I'm talking too low, let me know. Another thought that I haven't already said is I'd rather we not play gotcha games with each other. If I make a mistake, let me know. But if it's some kind of, trifling thing, you don't necessarily need to point out every small flaw that I or another student make. But I do make mistakes, and if I make a mistake, let me know. It's up to your good judgment as to whether you think it's trifling or not. But please, let's not play gotcha games. That doesn't add any value. So Unit 6, foreign exchange is the biggest part of Unit 6. And then some other things like the balance of payments. Here's our rough schedule. So week 1, we're going to talk a lot about Unit 1 concepts. Week 2 is, you see here, foreign exchange. That's Unit 6. So again, I want to put foreign exchange towards the beginning of class. I want to put foreign exchange towards the beginning of the starting point of this class so that we have week 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 to to discuss it, because everything in this class, every concept in this class can theoretically relate to a different concept. So we'll relate foreign exchange to every other concept. So as we relate foreign exchange to different concepts, we will continue to use foreign exchange. And as much as we use it, I think that you'll benefit from that, because the more you use it, hopefully the more it will sink in. Week 3, we're reviewing foreign exchange, and then we're moving on to aggregate supply, aggregate demand, and what shifts those curves, and what long run, what economic growth means, and what will happen if there are no governmental policy interventions. Week four, we're going to discuss foreign aggregate supply, aggregate demand again, kind of wrap it up slash review it, and then we'll move on to a different topic called investment demand. That's another graph. Um, so we'll graph that. So by week four, we'll have about four graphs: PPC, Forex, ASAD, and for investment demand. Fiscal policy, we'll touch on that hopefully in week four and bring it home in week five. And embedded in fiscal policy is the idea of crowding out, and that'll be a different graph, and we'll discuss that topic in week five. A little math comes up in week five: spending multiplier and tax multiplier. The math in our class is probably about eighth grade algebra. So I'm not saying it's easy. What I'm saying is there's no calculus. And a lot of times, students who are proficient in higher end math, like statistics and calculus, try to put that in this class. And there's no place for calculus. There's no place for probability and statistics, calculus AB or BC in AP macroeconomics. So keep the math simple, please. Week six, monetary policy in the limited reserves environment, not ample reserves. We'll look at that a little later in the class. We have another graph with the money market. We will discuss what um, changes the graph of the money market with money supply, money demand. And week seven, we're going to continue with monetary policy. See those big topics, those 25 to 30% topics, we're going to spend more than 1 week on. Week seven, we're continuing with monetary policy. Look at how monetary policy affects real wages and how it affects LRAS. And then we're going to look at the money multiplier, a little bit more math with the money multiplier. Week eight is a big topic of week eight. Week eight is the Phillips curve. And the reason I put the Phillips curve towards the end of the class is because it's a good opportunity to review aggregate supply, aggregate demand. The Phillips curve is just a rehashing and just a review of aggregate supply, aggregate demand. So as we're starting to forget a little bit about aggregate supply, aggregate demand, we bring it back up again because that's the whole heart of the Phillips curve: aggregate supply, aggregate demand. We're going to review some of those bigger topics just to make sure we haven't forgotten them, especially by using the Phillips curve. Week nine, I don't have a whole lot for week nine as in new topics. So week nine, we can review topics like the foreign exchange market. Um, and we do have two topics to discuss. So for week nine, I kind of envision roughly 45 minutes on balance of payment and business cycle. And then the rest of the time, we can review, maybe do some practice questions in class and give you some real-time feedback for week nine. Week 10, that's our GDP, unemployment, inflation, the types of inflation, types of unemployment, who benefits from a rate of inflation that's higher than expected, who is hurt by a rate of inflation that's higher than expected. Week 11 is monetary policy in an ample reserves environment. So since about 2008, in the United States, we've been in an ample reserves environment, but they've only started testing that topic last year. Last year was the first time that monetary policy with ample reserves was tested on the AP exam. So the thought is that they're going to test that more, because last year was kind of the warning shot that, hey, we're going to test you. So we're thinking that this year, a little bit more of that will be tested on the AP macroeconomics exam. Week 12, we wrap up with a review, last chance for questions, maybe some in-class FRQ practice and multiple choice practice. So here's how you can join the class. You can go to this Momentum Learning site and hit that join your class live. We won't have class on March 9th for spring break. I'm going to guess that you're pretty conversant with Canvas. If you're not, it's a pretty easy program to use. It's pretty self-explanatory. A lot, for the most part, we're going to use the modules tab. You see over here it says home discussions, grades, modules, collaborations, and chat. A lot of the documents are going to be in the modules tab. So um, please be able to use Canvas. Um, it'll be a good idea if you can submit your homework before the next class, but I think it's a really, really good idea for you to do the homework. I value your time, and I have done my best to select problems that I think um, uh, test your knowledge of concepts that have a high chance of appearing on the AP macroeconomics exam. Like I said, we're not going to talk a lot about tariffs or the stock market, saving, because that's not dramatically tested on the AP macroeconomics exam. So um, you'll be able to access this material well after the last day of class, well after the AP exam, even. So my sample teaching would be something like um, drawing a PPC graph and plotting a point as A. Basically, my teaching style is interactive lecture. I'll lecture, but oftentimes I'll pause to ask you a question, or I'll pause to ask if you have questions. Um, I'd like to have a conversation as much as possible. I may dominate the conversation because I'll be lecturing so much, but I feel like I've already discussed this with you the first minute of this open house by saying, if you have a question, please ask. Please don't feel like you're interrupting or you're holding anybody back or anything of the sort. So that's my teaching style. Are there any questions or concerns or comments or thoughts anybody would like to make? There's the phone number, the office phone number. If you have a question, the first point of contact should be this office phone number and this website, and that's this email address. Um, the reason we ask you to call this office phone number is because oftentimes there are questions that I may not have the answer to because it's not about the content. You can ask questions about content in our Zoom meeting. Um, so it may be a question about payments or things that I don't have answers to. Um, but please feel free to stay in touch. Please feel free to reach out anytime you have a question or a thought or an idea. So the question is, AP Macroeconomics is supposed to be a one semester class. If it's taken in the fall, this is a refresher class. Yes. This we're presupposing that you have already taken AP Macroeconomics by joining this class. If you haven't taken AP Macroeconomics by taking this class, this may be a good class to take if you want to self-study. If you've been studying AP Macroeconomics on the side and you didn't take a class in high school, but you want to sit for the AP exam, this would be a great class. This momentum learning class would be a great class to take to self-study and to add to your knowledge of AP Macro. It'll also be a good class to take, not just for the content, but for understanding what topics are stressed on the AP exam and what topics are not so stressed on the AP exam, something you may not get if you are self-studying. I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, feel free to let me know. Okay, cool. Looks like I answered it. Take care of yourself. Have a great day. Like I said, stay warm, stay dry, and I will see you in the future.